to have Julie Boland from the National Recreation and Park Association to give us a front seat view into some of the anticipated trends in parks and recreation for the coming year. Julie is the Vice President of Credentialing and Member Operations for NRPA. She received her Bachelor's of Science in Forestry from Purdue University and has been working in the field of parks and recreation since 2000. Prior to her time with NRPA, she served as the park director for the city of Crown Point, Indiana. She is a certified park and recreation executive from the National Recreation and Park Association and certified association executive from the American Society of Association Executives. Please join me in welcoming Julie Boland. We'll have time for questions after her presentations.
Thank you so much for the warm welcome. I sincerely appreciate that. So we'll go ahead and jump in and get started. Let me share my screen. Bear with me for just a second. All right. Hopefully everybody can see my screen at this time. So as you heard, today's presentation will be on the 2022 trends in parks and recreation. And you'll find that I actually struggled a little bit with this topic, as Montgomery County Parks and Maryland National Capital Park and Planning Commission are very much on the forefront of innovation and trends within the field of parks and recreation. So it was a fun challenge for me to identify opportunities in which I could share even further trends outside of what you see in your community. So I appreciate the opportunity. All right, so let's get started. So first, we're going to look at climate resilient and climate ready communities. This is something that NRPA is very focused on. It is part of our strategic plan. It is also part of our pillars. And we just really are looking at communities and park and recreation agencies in a way that they can help to be a resource for their communities. And as you may know, parks and recreation professionals plan, manage, program, and maintain over 11 million acres of public spaces and green spaces nationwide. This makes them, or us, one of the largest land managers in the nation. This also provides us with the keys to climate change solutions, opportunities to help our communities advance technologically, and identifying opportunities for the future. To be honest, I felt there was a fine line between innovation and trends. So this presentation is going to include a little bit of both. So just for a quick example of one way in which communities have started to provide opportunities for rainwater collection. This picture gives us an example of a community's efforts to collect rainwater, resulting in a reduction of demand on the municipal water supply, minimization of erosion and property flooding, as well as the need for the water to grow their community garden. We're living in a time where rising global temperatures are causing major physical, chemical, and ecological changes. Parks and recreation professionals play a critical role in combating the causes and impacts of climate change. Montgomery County Parks and the Maryland National Capital Park and Planning Commission are active contributors in addressing climate change, including policy creation, integration of park trails, increasing tree canopies and green space, and basically all of the options you see listed here. However, did you know that the top way that park and recreation agencies can take action on climate change is through offering transportation alternatives that reduce the carbon footprint? If you'd like more information on this one, we actually have an entire article in Parks and Recreation magazine on Plan Z for Miami. But what we'll be looking at today are these opportunities. So park and recreation professionals and agencies have opportunities to impact heat islands, increasing heat and air pollution through advancement and expansion of tree canopies, green space, and the use of impervious surfacing. Also, as we continue to see the impacts of climate change impact our nation and our communities, floodings and storms are becoming prevalent in the news, and parks and recreation agencies and professionals really can play a key role in creating green infrastructure, rain gardens, and bioswales to try to offset those impacts. Another way in which park and recreation agencies and professionals can impact and make a difference in climate change is through education, through environmental education, programming, and connectivity. NRPA has created a green infrastructure benefits tool, and this provides features to review, including defining your benefits and measures that may result from your project. So for example, if you were trying to, you were wanting to create an urban tree canopy, you would plug in urban tree canopy as you see here, and it is going to produce you a report that will identify what environmental measures and benefits will come from the creation of urban tree canopies. It will also produce you what it will not produce, or provide you what it will not produce. So it's a great tool as you continue to look at opportunities for green infrastructure within your community, and identifying ways in which the best ways in which you can make that impact depending on what type of project you have. So it does talk about environmental benefits, benefits to the water, air, land, and wildlife in and around your project, health benefits to the physical and mental health of the community, social benefits to the social cohesion and public safety, and economic benefits to the workforce and business development. So here we're going to talk a little bit about environmental stewardship. So in an effort to provide you with some unique opportunities and unique innovations that are taking and trends that are taking place in the field of parks and recreation, we've pulled a number of environmental stewardship opportunities that are taking place nationwide. And here you can see that one of the real trends in environmental stewardship is the use or the creation of conservation and sustainability cores. So the first core that we took a look at is the New York City Parks core, that is the Youth Sustainability Core. They are actually separate from AmeriCorps. They are in charge of providing green roofs for the city of New York. And they're actually going to be expanding the number of green roofs that are currently provided by New York City by over 25%. This includes saving the city $8.65 million while absorbing 1.5 million gallons of stormwater each year. This provides hands-on training and green jobs, workforce development to fill future nature-based New York City jobs. And the students that are coming into this program are coming from Children's Art and Science Workshops, Chinese American Planning Council, and they're coming from 18 different schools. So it's really a great opportunity for the youth within New York City to make an impact on their community while also building job skills and to help prepare them for the future. The next group that we looked at was the Philadelphia Parks and Recreation Power Corps. This is actually an AmeriCorps program. It is focused on similar goals: workforce development, environmental stewardship, and youth violence prevention. They have the program designed to offer anywhere from 4 to 18 months worth of paid workforce development. The individuals that are participating are required to have either high school or GED, and they must be within the 18 to 28-year-old range. Also, the types of staff they have was very impressive. Their staffing includes recruitment, administration, culture and climate, projects, workforce development, supportive services, and data and operations. And lastly, the Seattle Conservation Corps was another one we looked at. The Seattle Conservation Corps is focused on high school equivalency and basic math reading skills improvement. So I think the unique thing about Seattle is it really seemed like they incorporated even more skills beyond hands-on job skills. So they incorporated, like I said, basic math and reading skill development, job safety and technical skills, life skills, including money management, nutrition, job readiness, communication, job search prep skills, and also the proper use of power and hand tools. So I thought that was really unique perspective. So next we're going to jump into technology. This is one of the areas I think that gets referred to most when you're talking about trends because of things like what we see here, which is a drone. But we're going to dig a little bit deeper. So here you can see 3 pictures. These are common sights on the streets today. There's an inspector of some form and his computer working in the field. There is an extremely valuable maintenance team member on a mower. And we also have a community member signing for a delivery, which could very easily be a park and rec professional. But now let's look at the technology and where technology is moving when it comes to those 3 pictures. So the very first picture is a picture I liked. Obviously, I've used it twice, but the very first picture is a drone that's clearly applying an insecticide or a fungicide over what appears to be an orchard. And if you close your eyes, you can imagine a drone inspecting a building within a centimeter of accuracy. I think we've all seen them flying over and are well aware of their accuracy, and that's something that's very impressive, sometimes a little scary. But drones really have the opportunity to change the environment as we see it today. Next, we're going to look at the little mower. This is the future of mowing in parks. In June of 2021, Forbes reported on the introduction of fully autonomous commercial mowers by Scythe Robotics of Boulder, Colorado. Mowers are moving to be fully electric, zero emission, and require less maintenance. So as we can see here, this is a small version, but I can very easily take this picture, put it in my mind, and picture the opportunities that can come before parks and recreation agencies when it comes to having mowing in parks, and the opportunities to work with the very valuable maintenance team member and potentially have them focus on other aspects of green infrastructure or just other challenges that they may already be facing with timing and having the capacity that they need. So these are very exciting opportunities for mowing in the future. And finally, these guys, the little delivery drone there in the last picture on the right, you see where we're headed. And this is a picture that is a delivery drone. And one thing I noticed is he's likely on, I shouldn't say he, it's likely on a multi-use trail. As we can all imagine, a drone driving itself down a multi-use trail can create some unique challenges for park and recreation agencies, and is something that park and recreation agencies are likely going to have to look at and discuss and potentially create policy around the use. There are actually communities that have already created policies relating to these drones, and I'll cover that a little bit in just the next slide. So, as I said, drones are already being developed for pollinating meadows, applying herbicides, building inspections, and even light shows. Not to mention, Amazon received the FAA's permission to conduct drone delivery operations. So now we've opened up the world to drones in a whole different view. Mowers are moving towards fully autonomous, and those pedestrian robots are a wave of the future, requiring park and recreation agencies to be prepared. The states that I was referring to earlier include Pennsylvania, Virginia, Idaho, Florida, and Wisconsin. They have all passed liberal rules permitting robots to use sidewalks. So we can see here, there's a woman that's tending to her rooftop garden. Let's step back from technology and let's look at innovation and trending opportunities for spaces in parks and recreation. There are so many examples of agencies and organizations being innovative with where they are and what they are considering for parks. It only takes a little imagination. So let's look here. I've pulled out 5 examples of up and coming parks. So as we know, COVID brought about an influx of street parks. Whether it was Philadelphia closing off streets for parks fun in the summer, agencies with their communities to close down, working with their communities to close down central streets to create parks for use, or spaces like Black Lives Matter Plaza in DC. These streets are truly part of placemaking. You can also see we've talked, so that's street parks, we're moving on to underground parks. So I don't know how many of you might be aware, but the New York City has already started testing underground parks with a low-lying park that they are looking to put in a 1-acre former bridge trolley terminal. So if you're interested in underground parks, I definitely encourage you to look up the low-lying park in New York City. If you haven't checked out the 11th Street Bridge Park in Washington, DC, I definitely recommend it. This park is building bridges across the river. They're planning to promote and provide recreational environmental education, as well as the arts. And the pictures of their plans are definitely one to see. It's a very innovative project that's going to bring a lot of happy faces across the 11th Street Bridge. Also, if we're moving on to roof parks, there is one notable park that was mentioned in Parks and Recreation magazine, and that is the Dutch city of Rotterdam, and it is called Dak Park. And Dak Park is a rooftop park above a 4,000 foot long building, including play courts and gardens. Communities have also branched, this is a new one for me, but communities have also branched out to include glow-in-the-dark trails, such as in Benton, Iowa. They have a 2-mile-long trail that has over 3,000 pounds of glowstones scattered along the trail. And basically, it takes only 15 minutes for these glowstones to charge, and they last over 15 hours. I thought that was really neat. Amenity. So here, just to give you a little bit of a view of some of the potential park spaces, we have, I'm going to butcher this name, but the Fukuoka Professional International Hall. I honestly just felt like this was a really great representation of a green roof, and it really inspired me to start to think about what could be. And I kind of pictured this as a potential green roof park. So I feel like that imagination that is spurred by some of these trends and innovation is really what takes us the distance with parks and recreation professionals. And then the second picture is a picture of the reflectors in the Lowline Lab in New York. The third picture is an example of one of the street parks that we talked about. This is Main Street Park City in Utah. And lastly, my favorite picture, the glowing sidewalk, and that is in Vinton. So just wanted to share some pictures to hopefully spark some thoughts about potential. Now that we've talked about some of those spaces, we're going to jump into looking at opportunities and trends and inclusivity. So some of these agencies that we were researching really knocked it out of the park when it comes to inclusivity. Lee's Summit, Missouri has included American Sign Language signs that teach individuals the alphabet and commonly used terms. In La Crosse Parks, Wisconsin, and Pittsburgh Parks Conservancy, they've installed signs saying all are welcome. Obviously, these are all examples of encouraging inclusivity and diversity within our parks and recreation facilities. The Pennsylvania Department of Conservation and National Resources installed signs, nature for all. When you're talking about programming, San Diego Parks and Recreation created a Summer for All of Us, Come Play Outside initiative that provided programs to historically underserved neighborhoods. Communities across the nation are adding public art within their communities. One really great example that we found for public art was St. Louis, Missouri has an Artists of Color Council. And their Artists of Color Council is actually a group of professionals, of artists who come together and create different opportunities for art within their community. And that art expands beyond just the standard or commonly used sculptures into music and dance and more. So I think another opportunity that we have for placemaking is taking what we have as park and recreation professionals and providing it to our communities. And what I mean by that is here we have two different examples of, one example of a professional who is providing environmental education to students. And you can see that in the background of this picture, or hopefully you can see, that it is a cityscape, that there are almost looks like industrial buildings back in the background. So environmental education, it just kind of helps us to stop and think about the opportunities of bringing environmental education to the students as compared to always having them come out to us. And so I think that's a great example of finding a place and making it what we want and what our community needs. I also love the second picture, as this is a Black Lives Matter protest or speaking event. And I think that one of the key critical points to this picture is that these individuals all have a space that they feel they can gather. And we as park and recreation professionals provide those spaces. And so it's an important part of what we do to ensure that as we move forward in the future, we're taking into consideration the needs of our community and the needs for individuals to have those opportunities to speak out and to share their passions. And I think that this is something that we're seeing more and more. And so it just provides us an opportunity that as we look into the future to keep these events in mind. All right, so this picture, I'm hoping that you can kind of convert these two pictures or kind of merge the two pictures. Because what I would love to chat about just a little bit are the opportunities in which we have to repurpose land. And park and recreation agencies are commonly experiencing challenges with, activating spaces or identifying ways in which we can repurpose or advance the spaces that we do have. And I think that here you see on the left is a golf course. There are many golf courses throughout the nation. Some are very actively engaged, some are not so actively engaged. We did see an increase during COVID of outside activity, which means an increase in activity at the golf courses. But what it also does is depending on how that continues to move forward, or if there's potential to merge golf courses or participants from golf courses, I think that there's a real opportunity for us to look at golf courses in a different way. And many park and recreation agencies have already started to transition golf courses over into opportunities for their community to impact climate change. And what they're doing is, if you transition your eyes to the right, is they're actually taking golf courses and they're turning them into wetlands. So they're repurposing the land and they're reducing the impacts of climate change and adding needed community resources. Because as we continue to see climate change, as we continue to see an increase in the storms and the water surges, these areas are going to be critical areas to absorb and take in some of that additional rainwater and to potentially save the community that it may be outliers on those golf courses, because there's a big difference between the amount of water that a golf course can take in as compared to a wetland. So it's definitely an opportunity for us as park and recreation professionals. Ocala Parks and Recreation is actually using a former golf course, and they're taking the ponds and creating deep marshes. And they're also converting fairways into wetlands. So this really is an example of what we can do if we just put our minds together and use our imagination. The goals of what they're doing is to remove nitrogen and phosphorus and to provide benefits to the underlying aquifer. They're creating a setting for wildlife and involving community through environmental education. They will be filtering over 3 million gallons of treated wastewater through Ocala Wetland Recharge Park. So these are a number of ways and a number of trends and innovations that we are seeing in the field of parks and recreation today. There are so many other things that I do not have in this presentation. Activities that are taking place within the field of parks and recreation, maybe not on this global scale, but there are other opportunities that are available, and there are a number of resources that we offer to park and recreation professionals to continue growing your knowledge of the trends and the opportunities in the field of parks and recreation to grow. And those include opportunities like Parks and Recreation Magazine, as I spoke of earlier. There are opportunities through NRPA Connect. NRPA Connect is our networking platform where park and recreation professionals nationwide are sharing the trends, the innovation that they are actually truly implementing within their community at any one time. Our NRPA website, nrpa.org, also has an abundance of information relating to our 3 pillars. So I encourage you to tap into the resources. Like I said, Montgomery County Parks and Maryland National Capital Planning Park and Park Commission are actively engaged in innovation, and they're setting the trends oftentimes. So really looking forward to see what continues to come from this organization. And it's really been a pleasure to share these trends and innovations for 2022. So hopefully you've enjoyed the presentation. I'm a little short of the 45 minutes, but that will give us a little bit of an opportunity to answer some questions. So let me stop my screen share. Okay, and I will do the best I can to answer the questions. If I'm not able, I will try to send you some in a proper direction.
Wow, first of all, thank you so much for your such a amazing presentation, and it looks very cutting edge that feel like you send us 20 years forward and down the road. So it was very exciting with a lot of amazing technology related and also examples from other jurisdictions. So thank you so much.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity immensely.
Yeah, and I just want to mention that first of all, Montgomery County Parks itself is actually going through our policy plan, creation. It's called the PROS, so Park and Recreation Open Space Plan. So this is the every 5 years update that we're doing, and through that, we've been actually exploring a lot of different opportunities how park can do multiple things. Park should do multifunction. It's not just for one recreational thing, but it should be for social gathering. It should be for environmental stewardship and everything. So that is something that we've been actually focusing a lot. So I think in that sense, your presentation itself is definitely fitting well with what we're trying to do. So a couple of questions came out. And one of the question is that, is there any opportunities that, technology in the park can enhance much more social gathering? Have you seen any examples in other jurisdictions that, in addition to, maintenance or any other, how can these kind of cutting edge technology can also contribute for more people to come to park and utilize more park as for social gathering?
Sure. Well, I mean, I think, so I'm going to use my imagination here. And I would say that there are a lot of opportunities in which we can use the technology that's currently available. And there are a lot of park and recreation agencies that are using the technology that's available. And I would say that the one that we see predominantly is the use of drones. Even to the point where I attended a state association conference, and they literally were driving a drone around the exhibit hall. So it is definitely an opportunity for park and recreation professionals to engage drones to bring awareness to what may be already occurring in your parks. You have an opportunity to kind of bring people to the park and really show them. You could show them around the park and introduce them to the different amenities in a park with a drone. If you're having an event and you want to introduce people to what it looks like, kind of from the bird's eye view, you could really use a drone for marketing purposes, whether it be through the website, or even just pushing out an email or through your social media aspects. I think that, we see that a lot. We see drones used a lot more these days to introduce community members who may not either have ever been to your parks, have been to that event, or may not be able to, again, to get to that event. So, I mean, it's also another inclusivity aspect, is you have an opportunity to bring the park to the person. And that, I think, even is an opportunity in something like COVID, in this challenging time that we're in currently. We want people to get out to the parks, but there may be people who aren't feeling well, but we want to bring them happiness. We want to bring them and make them feel like they're at the parks. And I think that, using some of those technologies that we have, there's opportunities there. I mean, I look at while the little delivery drone can make challenges, one of the things I referenced back to was my days in the field where I was managing programs. And I'm like, oh, wow, like those times when you forget something, and how cool would it be just to have this little drone, like, bring you what you need. So it's all about kind of using your imagination to really embrace the potential. And, and identifying if it's a good thing or not, because the little delivery drones, carrying the last few things that you forgot for a program may not be the best move. It just depends on the situation. So, like I said, I think that the main one that we see is the use of drones to introduce people to park spaces, to introduce people to park events, and to bring them into that area or that field.
Yeah, I mean, thank you for the answer. So that kind of reminds me, even like the way we are doing community outreach these days, with the COVID situation, it has been changed to as a Zoom meeting like this a lot. And, one of actually a tick that we've seen is, because of that, a lot more people can actually participate easily without, going, and has to arrange transportation. And then the other thing is, like, traditionally, because of that, like, husband might attend, but wife couldn't attend. But like now, like all families start participating, even their kids started participating and sharing their opinions for playground and such. So it's been very interesting, like civil engagement that we've seen. So that's a huge plus. And okay, so the next question I see in the screen is, do you think we'll see a number of park systems embracing these trends, such as drones and golf course examples? And I'm going to actually like add, some notes that yes, as a Montgomery County Parks, we are seeing a lot of like, defunct, golf course potentially coming to us, and we need to, reimagine, those courses to be revamped as something different. So we were potentially talking about like this golf course or something else. And so, yeah, I wonder, like, have you seen, other than these environmental conversion example you showed, any other like recreational facility you've seen, and or any other creative method or the facilities?
Yes, I mean, I've seen a number of different things within my day. Obviously, golf courses there's so much space that is in existence with a golf course. I mean, there's no stopping us, because nothing says that we can't do both. Nothing says that we as park and recreation professionals can't say, this is a golf course, and we have opportunities to not only create opportunities to gather water, to create wetland features, to help filter community water, but we also have an opportunity to add a disc golf course, to create a walking path, to connect the ponds with wetlands, and then a bridge, and create environmental areas. I mean, because just because they became a golf course doesn't mean they have to be a golf course. And so it's really just, stepping outside of the box and looking at any number of things that a golf course could potentially become, depending on the golf course and the way it was set up. The opportunities are endless, I guess, as far as what can be done. I would say that probably the majority of what I saw when researching was really the conversion of golf courses to wetland features, to try to help increase preservation, green space, and really trying to impact the communities in that way. So it was predominantly in that direction. But like I said, I don't know that we're confined to that. That nothing says that we can't do both, or many things. That you could put a pickleball course, pickleball court out. That's been something that we see a lot of these days. So, there are many different opportunities when you have such an expansive resource as a golf course. And getting them is not necessarily a bad thing, because I think the other thing that is advantageous to looking at something like a wetland and the conversion of a golf course to a wetland is, hopefully, as you plan that out, you're creating something not only long-term, but you're creating something, or you have an opportunity to create something that is not high maintenance. Because if you're using native plant species and things like that, we're also helping the environment in that way and bringing the native plant species back into the area, and just really creating something that parks and recreation professionals can maintain without an extreme weight or on the capacity of that team.
Yeah, another thing to note about particularly golf courses, in the past, golf or tennis and that kind of sports was kind of declining, but during the COVID, people started, dusting off their tennis racket and start playing tennis and golf, because that's really good for socially distanced sport. So we definitely see some of the trend again getting like changed. So that's another aspect to note. And speaking also COVID, and one of our audience created actually interesting question. Are there other ways in which COVID has enlarged our imaginations about how park can be designed and used? I bet there are millions way and examples you've seen these days.
Yes, I mean, I really think that park and recreation professionals, one of the biggest opportunities for us as a national organization representing park and recreation professionals is bringing attention to what all park and recreation agencies are doing, because it's really been an opportunity for us to say, look, everything closed and parks and recreation stayed open. And so that's something that we're continuing to work on, is identifying ways in which we can make a movement from the parks and recreation field and the opportunities and what the park and recreation professionals are doing. And so as far as COVID, I think that it's really highlighted things like the need for trail spaces. I think that, the communities that park and recreation agencies serve have really fled to those alternative methods of transportation during COVID. They may not have been able to take mass transit. They may not have been able to access the gym, but what they were doing is finding trail spaces that were near them to be able to get out and exercise, to use it as alternative transportation. So I think that a lot of communities started to realize the disconnect between some of their transportation methods. So, for example, did you have sidewalks accessible, and were children able to walk to school, or, were there disconnects there? I think that it also opened up park and recreation agencies to look at the spaces they were providing, and were they inclusive? I mean, obviously COVID and some of the challenges that we've seen over the last few years have heightened the awareness and the need for inclusivity and the recognition and the embracing of diversity. And so I really think that park and recreation professionals during COVID and during that time when many agencies were focused on providing emergency services. I think that's a whole nother area that isn't, I haven't even talked about, but is the way in which park and recreation agencies provided those emergency services, whether it was through food, whether it was through housing, or you know, just remaining open during COVID. Those services were so critical. And I think that it gave them also an opportunity to be hands-on. But I think I feel like the communities that have been served during the time of COVID have also recognized and embraced Parks and Recreation and have come forward to provide some of that, their feelings during the time of COVID. So I think that that's also inspired some of that connectivity through the communities.
Yeah, I mean, speaking of, I was actually visiting New York City at the end of the year, and shocked at how many actually streets were converted as an open street. You know, it definitely demonstrates that there are a lot of needs, you know, reason that, you know, from people, particularly people living in urban area, you know, any little patch of the land, you know, needs and want to be utilized as open space. So, you know, it's different from traditional open green park space. However, once it becomes like those open street, it becomes the publicly available, more pleasant, you know, social gathering type of space for people. So it was really interesting trend to notice. And having said that, another question sort of related on that, one of our audience is asking, like, can you speak to the trend of linking transportation improvement / infrastructure with parks?
Sure. I think so. I actually tend to reference my experience in the field of Parks and Recreation when you ask a question like that, because what I found was extremely advantageous was actually just truly engaging with the city engineer. I was in a small community, so had a very small team, worked directly with the engineer as they were planning to build or improve the streets throughout the community. And so that direct involvement and making that connection to the city engineer actually created an opportunity and an opening for us to expand the offerings that we had in the community for the connections between transportation opportunities. So for example, if they were expanding a road or making improvements to a road, we would have a conversation and I'd be like, okay, well, do we have any, you know, wiggle room? Can we add a multi-use trail next to this? We have opportunities, connectivity. I think also it's really critical to plan ahead. It's hard when you're in a community that's already designed and structured, but I think the more that we as professionals can start to identify the connections between parks, the opportunities, where do we already see people traveling a lot, using sidewalks, and really trying to identify those patterns, I guess, and take those patterns and turn them into a plan. And having that plan in existence is really the way in which you move forward. And I think, you know, agencies have really seen that. If you're looking for something specific, I can't, you know, encourage you enough to check out our Parks and Recreation magazine and Miami's article. It is all about their transportation connection plans, and there's so much valuable information in there. Also, again, NRPA Connect, for those of you who are park and recreation professionals, use the search function, and you know, really identify, you know, type in trails or connectivity, because I think that there are so many communities that are out there doing it. Some are established communities that are finding and identifying ways in which they can make that connectivity occur, and others may be agencies that were more like the small agency I worked for, where there were still a lot of opportunities available. But there are always opportunities if you put your mind to it. And also, if you start to make those partnerships, you start to identify those ways in which you can connect with the people that are maybe pulling the strings when it comes to streets and road expansions and things like that.
Yeah, I mean, speaking of transportation infrastructure, actually, a recent example for Montgomery Parks is that we were actually we were trying to reclaim some of those highway cloverleaf space as a park. So that is something that we're trying to have and about to get succeed to implement something. So that's one of our exciting example.
That's wonderful.
Yeah, and so one other example, this is a switching gear. One of the question came up since the drone mowing equipment is very interesting. Like, has there been any kind of funding or grant that, a lot, encourages for such a technology to be implemented?
I would have to admit that I don't know one right offhand. Definitely encourage you to check out our website. We do post grant opportunities as they come up, so highly encourage you to keep an eye on that website no matter what you're looking for. But I don't know of any specifically at this time. But again, kind of a partnership aspect or opportunity is stay engaged with your vendors who are providing those types of tools and resources for you, as they may have an opportunity that they could share as well. So who knows, when it comes to innovation, sometimes they need folks to try things out for them. So I would definitely stay in touch when it comes to that with the providers of those tools.
That sounds great. Okay, so additional question. Interesting example of working with a small town. Are there city/town policies that can facilitate the kind of departmental integration that works well? If there could be any examples like that. More cross-pollination is something that I think this audience is looking for.
Yes. Honestly, I think I am not familiar with a lot of policies when it comes to facilitating that kind of integration. That's an interesting question, because I feel like maybe in a different setting, something like a more sizable setting, I would imagine that, the first thing to do is to really open up that level of communication, because you're not going to get anywhere until you start the conversation. And so, whether there's a policy or not, I would imagine some may have like interdepartmental agreements that they may create to try to encourage further engagement between departments. So I imagine there are probably policies out there. It's definitely a question you can ask. But I feel like there are probably agreements in place depending on the community that you work for, and depending on maybe who the parties are that are involved, whether it's going to take an agreement or whether it's just going to take a conversation and a recognition of the goals and direction of your community and what the outcomes are that you're looking for as a community.
Great. Considering time, I will ask this as a last question. And I think this is a wonderful question as a last. Like, do you see any trends that relate to increasing social connections by leveraging park and recreation? I mean, park is like the anchors these days, right? So
they are. Oh, wow. That's a tough one. So, okay, can you say the question one more time, just so I make sure I grasp?
Sure. Yeah. Do you see any trends that would relate to increasing social connections by leveraging parks and recreation?
Leveraging, okay. Well, I mean, hopefully I introduced a few in the presentation, but I think that, the more we can recognize the differences of the communities that we serve and identifying ways in which we can connect with them, because I think sometimes it's a matter of us helping our communities to educate each other by bringing folks together, no matter what their background. So I think that there's always that opportunity for Parks and Recreation to engage professional. We talked about the street parks. Anytime you have a Park and Recreation facility, there's an opportunity to expand that social engagement, because it's all about bringing people together. And so identifying programs or, commonalities between groups, and also engaging active individuals within those communities, because it's amazing how much you can accomplish if you find the right person to say, look, we really want to offer this program. We think it's going to be a great opportunity to bring these two communities together, or to bring our community together, and really find those key individuals within your community that can help you to be successful in creating those social gatherings.
I think that's a wonderful answer. I really appreciate it, for today's your time and a wonderful presentation. So thank you for joining us today. Our next speaker series is set for February 15th, when we will be joining the director of Reimagining the Civic Commons for the panel discussion on this topic. A recording of today's session will be posted to the website at www.montgomeryparks.org/speaker series. Those of you who are applying for the continuing education credits will receive an email tomorrow with more details on that. And otherwise, without further ado, thank you so much again for joining, and have a good rest of the day. Thanks a lot.